The state of New Jersey won an appellate victory this week in its continuing legal fight to establish legalized sports gambling there. New Jersey Senior Senator Bob Menendez has long been an advocate of legalized online gambling, and he is a critic of the current state of daily fantasy sports. Sir, it's good to have you here. You've spoken of a level playing field, Senator. What specifically concerns you about the way these companies, the daily sports, fantasy sports companies, are doing business?
Well, when you see a DraftKings employee release player data prematurely, which means he had access to it before, and makes $350,000 on the other side, on FanDuel, and when you see that members of the companies of both of these two companies that control 90% of daily fantasy sports have made over $6 million, you have to question whether this is a fair, honest, and transparent playing field. And that's what should be guaranteed to the player. They'll make a decision whether to play or not, but the decision to make sure that it's fair, open, and transparent should be one that when you're looking at maybe going between $2 and $4 billion today, projected to be $16 to $17 billion by 2020, I think the government has a role here to make sure that it's appropriately regulated.
Right. This is all happening because of the loophole of the 2006 federal statute. It's a game of skill. Is this gambling?
Well, you know, when we created that exception, we were thinking about friends getting together and playing fantasy sports where at the end of the season there'd be a winner. No one envisioned a multi-billion-dollar industry, daily games, hundreds of thousands of people playing billions of dollars at stake. And look, at the end of the day, we have, you know, poker, horse racing. You can get better at skills by practicing and, you know, studying up, but they're regulated as gambling, and that's something that Congress is going to have to look at.
So is this gambling?
Well, increasingly, it seems to me that it looks like gambling the way it's taken off, not just because of the size of it, but the nature of what's taken place here. This is not just a question of skill, it seems to me.
What are the chances of hearings on this at the House and Senate level?
Well, I know that the NFL seems to be working against it, which they're on the wrong side of this. They should be protecting the players and the integrity of the games. At the end of the day, I'm pretty convinced that there is no way that hearings won't take place. My colleague, Congressman Pallone, the senior Democrat on the Commerce Committee in the House, have been pushing it pretty actively. I think you'll see hearings in the Senate. The Senate Judiciary Hearing Committee has been, several members have pressed there to have hearings, and when we go back into session this coming week, I cannot see how it doesn't ultimately give way to hearings so that we can decide what is going on behind the scenes. Is this open, fair, transparent, and honest for players to be able to make a bet honestly?
You mentioned the National Football League. They would make the point they have no equity interest, as they point to other leagues that do in these companies. They take issue with our reporting and the characterization of the lobbying to stop the hearings when they say that's not the case. That notwithstanding, why would the NFL want to prevent hearings, do you believe?
Well, look, first of all, a couple of major NFL franchise owners are invested in these companies. The NFL is getting significant revenues from advertising from these two companies, and they don't want any. They're protecting their corporate interests. I get that, but I think they're going about it all wrong. Having hearings doesn't mean that we're going to end up with a black eye. What we are going to end up with is hopefully the truth. And once we know the truth is going to ultimately lead us to a conclusion that this is okay, or that in fact it needs regulation because there are unfair practices taking place.
What would eventual federal regulation of daily fantasy sports mean to New Jersey's efforts to legalize sports gambling in the state?
Well, look, you know, New Jerseyans have spoken very clearly about sports gambling, but they're prohibited, as the Third Circuit Court of Appeals has decided, at least so far, because of federal law. For me, that's not the issue. The issue is when we have hundreds of thousands of players, sometimes on a daily basis, we need to make sure that they are getting an honest and fair shot. And whatever it means for legalized sports betting in New Jersey is really going to be dictated ultimately by how that federal law that prohibits states like New Jersey that didn't have sports betting legalized before the passage of the law, how that ultimately either gets changed or is interpreted by a court.
So Senator Bob Menendez telling us it's likely we will be seeing hearings. Senator, appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.